The following is a presentation of the Belly Up Sports Media Network.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Eye Test brought to you by Belly Up Media. I'm here with co-hosts Paul Orlando and Bobby Amendola, and today's episode is the Fantasy Doghouse. Now, if you watched yesterday's episode on the Week 1 Fantasy Awards, the fifth reward was not a good reward. In fact, if you were given this reward, you got one free ticket to the Fantasy Doghouse. And Paul, have you ever been put in the doghouse by a significant other, girlfriend?
Oh, dude, I practically live there.
Yeah, exactly. I feel like I'm like a platinum member at the doghouse. I get the master bedroom, the master suite, and all that stuff. It's great, very very comfy there. However, not a good place to be. In fact, we had two players that were given these free tickets to the doghouse in yesterday's episode. Bob gave Justin Fields the award. Paul gave DeAndre Swift the award, and they were just one-way tickets to the doghouse, and they're going to be stuck in the doghouse. And the only way that they can get out is if they perform, up to their projection or they blow it out 2 weeks in a row, right? They got to do it consistently. So if they do it for next week in week 2, which we'll project as we look forward to week 2, we'll give you our prediction on if we think that they could be put into fantasy probation. And then if they do well after that, they'll be free men. So first one was Justin Fields. Justin Fields did not live up to expectations. And the main reason for that was he wasn't the rushing quarterback that we all thought he was going to be, let alone his throwing stats of 216 yards and an interception. He ran 9 times for 60 yards, essentially, and had a fumble lost. Next week, he's going against Tampa Bay. Do I think that he can get put on probation? Honestly, I'm not going to say yes, because he was going against Green Bay. We thought that would be a good team that he could really roll on top of, and he didn't. So I do not think Justin Fields will do it again. And by do it again, I mean be a good quarterback again. I think that he's going to stay in the doghouse. Then we got DeAndre Swift. DeAndre Swift was not the featured running back for the Eagles, even after they pulled off this crazy trade during the draft. He was not the featured back. Kenny Gainwell was. And DeAndre Swift ran for 3 yards and had 0 reception yards, even though he did have a catch. Thanks for the 1 point, DeAndre Swift. DeAndre Swift finished with 1.3 points. Now, he does have a 4-day short notice against the Vikings. I am feeling a bit of a bounce back game. But what does that exactly mean for a player that had 1.3 points? Because if he gets 6 or 7 points, he's staying in the doghouse. So I'm not seeing Justin Fields or DeAndre Swift getting out of this. The only way that DeAndre Swift could is if the Eagles were maybe thinking of having him be the featured back against the Vikings, and they wouldn't be able to see much tape on him. But we will see. Let's head on over to the next candidate for the doghouse, and that's Joey Burrow. He's going to walk on into the doghouse, spread his cheeks, and cough 2 times. Joey Burrow, welcome to the doghouse, Bob. Bob, why does Joe Burrow need to be in here?
Thank you for that dazzling intro on Joe Burrow, John. But Joe Burrow's in the doghouse because he, quite frankly, just completely shit the bed this week. He had 3 fantasy points, completed less than 50% of his passes, didn't have over 100 yards, and didn't even throw a touchdown. So it was just probably one of Joe Burrow's worst career games. Although he lands in the doghouse now, I think he will have an opportunity to be put on probation next week, and I project that he will end up in probation because it's the home opener against the division rival in the Ravens. I think they'll be pumped up for that game, and I think Joe Burrow will get himself out of the doghouse.
All right, up next into the doghouse, we do have Jalen Hurts, another Eagle. The Eagles just had a disappointing week. Jalen Hurts, just like Justin Fields, he was not the runner that we expected. 9 runs, just like Justin Fields, but much less yards, 37. And he, too, lost a fumble. Got sacked 3 times. I mean, the Eagles just did not look like they did last year in any way, shape, or form. Jalen Hurts also only threw for 1 touchdown. Now, he is going against the Minnesota Vikings. I am expecting a bounce-back game, much like Joe Burrow. It is the home opener, and this was, week 1 was Jalen Hurts and Joe Burrow's first it was essentially their preseason game. It was their warm-up game. Unfortunately, it fell into the regular season. Fortunately, the Eagles were able to get a win out of that. But I'm expecting Jalen Hurts to find his way out of the doghouse and land on fantasy probation. Let's head on over to the next candidate into the fantasy doghouse. Welcome in another Eagle, Dallas Goedert. A wild 0 points, Paul.
Yeah, it was not looking good for the Eagles, and Dallas Goedert, unfortunately, was victim to that as well. Even though he played 92% of the snaps, he only saw one target and did not catch it. So Dallas Goedert laid a goose egg. Now, I believe, much like a lot of these Eagles not named DeAndre Swift, that Dallas Goedert is going to be a good little boy at the doghouse, and he's going to be super nice to all the guards, and he's going to do extra labor hours and share his meals and all this. I can totally foresee Dallas Goedert entering the probationary portal next week.
Yep. And then we got another tight end here, George Kittle. The two, Dallas Goedert and George Kittle, were like the two top tight ends going into week 1. I guess T-Hawk was up there too, but not a good look for the top tier tight ends or quarterbacks this week. Bob, George Kittle?
George Kittle he was pretty bad this week. Less than 5 points, 4.9 points in PPR leagues. And everyone thought he was Brock Purdy's top target. Turns out this week it was Brandon Ayuk. Although I do think next week it's going to be a different game. He's going up against the Rams, a divisional game. I think it's going to be a closer game as well since it's a divisional game, and he'll have an opportunity to score over 10, which will get him out of the doghouse and into the probationary portal, Paul. I like that.
Cool. All right. We got some positive projections here on going into the probationary portal here. Will Lamar Jackson get into the probationary portal? He's coming to the doghouse. I can tell you right now. Paul's giving him the silent treatment. I'm giving him the silent treatment. And, he just did not look that good. He only threw the ball 17 times. 22 times. He completed 17 passes, had no throwing touchdowns, fumbled the ball twice, lost it once, and did not rush for any touchdowns.
And threw a pick.
Yeah, yep, and threw a pick. So not looking too good for Lamar Jackson, but he does go against the Cincinnati Bengals. Paul, I'll let you handle this. Does Lamar Jackson find his way out of the doghouse?
I think he will eventually find his way out of the doghouse. I'm just not sure if it's this week. Now, the Bengals looked horrible, which is good, but Lamar, brand new offense, didn't play in the preseason. He was definitely a little rusty week 1 against the Texans. I definitely foresee him entering the probationary portal. I just don't know if it's in week 2.
All right, well, let's head on over to Najee Harris then, Paul. Najee Harris is coming to the doghouse, but can he find his way out next week?
Yes. I think Najee Harris can enter the probationary portal next week. The one good thing to take away from this is he did average over 5 yards per carry. Now, Pittsburgh got behind, and they got behind early. They honestly got their teeth kicked in by the San Francisco 49ers on week 1. So, unfortunately, with them having to throw the ball and Kenny Pickett looking like an absolute just disaster at quarterback, it hurt Najee's game script. I foresee them having a much better game against Cleveland. Pittsburgh and Cleveland are always hard-nosed football games, so I think the run game will improve, and we can see Najee enter the probationary portal next week.
And then we got another quarterback. The theme is crazy here. The top 5 quarterbacks are headed into the doghouse, and this is Josh Allen, Bob. He did not have a good performance week 1.
He did not at all. I mean, I'm kind of happy about it because even though I do have him on my fantasy team, he did lose to my Jets, which I'm happy about. But I think he is going to enter the probationary portal, despite the fact this past week he threw 3 interceptions, lost a fumble, and only finished with just over 11 points. But I think going a home opener against the Raiders don't have a good defense. And I think it's going to be a pretty easy game for Josh Allen to put up 20 plus, which will be good enough to get him into the probationary portal.
All right. And I think this is our first receiver entering the doghouse. Yes, it is. We got Terry McLaurin. Welcome in, Terry. Spread your cheeks and cough twice.
Put in reverse, Terry.
Terry McLaurin, dude. 2 catches on 4 targets, just not even involved. Is that the quarterback's fault? Maybe. I mean, Jahan Dotson found a way to perform better. And I think that was a concern heading into the season. Is Jahan Dotson going to be the breakout star and take over Terry? We'll find out. He goes against a Denver defense. He's probably going to have Patrick Surtain locked up on him. I do not think Terry McLaurin will find his way into the fantasy probation portal. Not at all. Terry McLaurin, he's signing up. He's like, "Do you guys have a membership awards here? Do you guys have a rewards program at the Doghouse?
Right.
You guys have Sky Miles?
Yeah." DJ Moore, a disappointing Bears offense. Just it's all coming together. Justin Fields and DJ Moore, Paul.
Yeah, DJ Moore, a former University of Maryland Terp, was disappointing. 92% of the snaps, only 2 targets to show for it. He did catch both of them for 25 yards. This offense scares me. I can totally see Justin Fields averaging 18 pass attempts per game, and it's just, I don't know what to do about DJ Moore. So if you drafted him expecting high hopes of a wide receiver too, yikes. I do not think that DJ Moore gets out of the probationary portal, even though they are in Tampa next week.
Yikes.
Kyle Pitts.
Yikes.
Kyle Pitts is a big yikes, Bob.
Yikes.
Is he going to be good at football ever?
No, the answer is no. And while he's in Atlanta and Arthur Smith is the coach, and with that said, he's not going to leave the probationary portal because Kyle Pitts has never shown us that he is even capable of leaving the doghouse. This guy, Arthur Smith, doesn't care about your fantasy team. He only gave Kyle Pitts 3 targets, and he caught 2 passes, although he did put up 44 yards. But unless it's just a random game where Kyle Pitts goes off, but there's been nothing in his career where you would think that he's going to just show up and be the tight end that we all expect him to be. So no, he's going to be stuck in the doghouse, and I think he's going to be stuck in the doghouse for a long time.
Oh no. Well, I mean, there is one good pro that we can take out of Kyle Pitts' performance in week 1, surprisingly, and it's the fact that he did a lot better than fellow wide receiver Drake London, who's coming in. Drake London, welcome into the fantasy doghouse. Make yourself warm because I don't see you getting on the fantasy probationary portal at all. It's just Bob said it. There's not going to be a lot of volume coming your way, Drake London and Kyle Pitts. And to the owners who got them, I ask why. Paul, I've been waiting for you to talk about this one. I thought he was going to be a star, dude. I thought you had a fat head of Rachaad White, but now he's just a fat head in the fantasy doghouse.
Yeah, I tried to order Rachaad White fathead earlier this offseason, and now I kind of understand why they don't have him available. Rachaad White, although he played 79% of the snaps, he did get 17 touches on the ground and saw 2 targets in the pass game. He did absolutely nothing with those opportunities. He averaged under 2.5 yards per carry.
Yikes.
Yikes is right. The only silver lining here is that his backup, Sean Tucker, went to my high school. So if anybody's going to win the job, I hope it's him. But
oh, no. Don't tell me you're already turning on Rachaad White.
No. I'm not turning on him. I think Rachaad White can enter the probationary portal.
No, he can't.
I think he's going to struggle with getting out, though. He does get Chicago next week. So I can see him putting up a decent game, and then we'll put him on trial. But then Philly comes to town, and that's just probably going to get him sent right back. His schedule is just up and down, but I think week 6 and week 7, Detroit and Atlanta. I think maybe Detroit's defense, even though they did hold Patrick Mahomes, they're not that great. I do foresee Rachaad White getting out of the doghouse. I just don't know if it's in the near future.
Yeah, because remember, if you outperform your projection or at least get to that point after being put in the doghouse, you're put on the probationary portal, and you can only get to freedom by doing it a second week. And yeah, Rachaad White not looking good from the schedule that we're looking at here. How about Antonio Gibson, Bob? I mean, he was on my do not draft list, so I don't have any shares of him, and I'm very happy because he did horrible.
I think he was, but contrary to you, I think he was on a lot of people's draft list because of Eric Bieniemy. People were getting pretty excited about Antonio Gibson, and the Washington running backs. But Brian Robinson stole the show, played almost 65% of the snaps. Antonio Gibson played a little over 30%, and he did absolutely nothing with those snaps. He didn't even score a single fantasy point. He scored 0.9, 3 rushes for 9 yards, and had 1 catch for 10 yards. It just was a terrible performance for him, and his schedule is very bleak coming up. His next 3 games are at Denver, home against Buffalo, and at Philadelphia. So if this snap percentage continues where Brian Robinson is playing 65% compared to Gibson's 35%, unless Brian Robinson gets hurt, Antonio Gibson is not leaving the doghouse anytime soon, and he may end up being one of fantasy football's bigger busts this season.
Oof. And this guy's a scary candidate for one of the bigger busts, and that's Josh Jacobs. I mean, running back 3 last year, came in week 1 against Denver and ran the ball 19 times, which I do like. He was in 80% of the snaps, so he's clearly a focal point of the offense. But I think the Denver defense just, really watched film or something like that. Josh Jacobs did not score a touchdown. He was not part of the receiving game as much, 2 catches for 20 yards, unlike last year where that was like the big surprise that Josh Jacobs was a PPR guy. He goes up against Buffalo next week. I have a weird feeling. Obviously, he's a must start, but I do have a weird feeling that he is going to find his way on probationary period for a bounce back game. I think the Raiders just had a little bit of a wake up call, and they're like, "Oh yeah, we need to make Josh Jacobs successful if we want to win games." I don't think the Raiders are going to win this game against the Bills, but I do think that Josh Jacobs can score his projected 14 points. All right. Up next, we've got Christian Kirk. We got 5 more for you guys here. Christian Kirk, Paul. I mean, we did not think that Christian Kirk was going to be this bad, right?
No, it was very disappointing for Christian Kirk, especially if you drafted him. You were looking at his first 4 games, even 5 games, 6 games, and salivating. Indy, Kansas City should be a shootout. Houston, Atlanta, Buffalo should be a shootout, and then Indy again. And Christian Kirk, Calvin Ridley took his lunch money. As you can see my name right there. Calvin Ridley just came in and said, "Did you forget that I'm Calvin Ridley?" And just went crazy. Now, with Christian Kirk, the rapport that we saw with Trevor Lawrence last year, I don't think that just goes by the wayside. I wouldn't take a huge overreaction to his week 1 performance. Yes, the 3 targets for 1 catch and 9 yards is disappointing, but I think that Christian Kirk will bounce back and at least be a capable high-end, middle-of-the-pack wide receiver 2 for the rest of the year.
Will this guy be a high-end wide receiver too? I think not. Kadarius Toney.
Oh.
Now, this was not one of the guys that was highly drafted, much like Christian Kirk. However, the expectations were high because he's the wide receiver 1 on the Chiefs and their offense is potent. But Kadarius Toney, I mean, he's arguably the reason Mahomes did not have that good of an outing because it was totally Kadarius Toney's fault for that pick 6. And Bob, what do you have to say about Mr. Kadarius? Because I think he's signing up for Sky Miles right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think Kadarius is going to be like a full-blown member. He's going to be here all season long. He's going to have a nice bed made in the doghouse, and he's going to have basically his own private suite by the end of the season. Because as we know with those Chiefs pass catchers, outside of Travis Kelce, they are very volatile. And I just don't see Kadarius Toney, even if he does manage to rebound from this terrible outing with 3 drops, and like you said, basically responsible for Mahomes' pick 6. I don't see him being able to put like 2 consistent weeks together, given how volatile this offense is and how much Mahomes spreads the ball around.
Yep. And then this is a little bit of a surprise here. This next one is the Seahawks defense. Now, it's not like they were let's just look this up. So last year they were the number 8 defense. So they were a top 10 defense. And they had, 45 sacks, 15 forced fumbles, 14 interceptions. So almost like a pick a game and basically a takeaway a game. And that put them into the top 10. And then what really the expectations for the Seahawks defense was that they weren't going to just score 1 point in week 1. They were playing the Rams. And we all went into week 1 thinking that the Rams were going to be one of the worst teams in the league, and it did not look that way, especially after the Cooper Kupp injury. But it did not look that way. The Rams looked good. They looked sharp. Matt Stafford was able to turn rags into riches with Puka Nacua and who's the new running back now that's taking Cam Akers' job?
Kyron Williams.
Kyron Williams. We'll talk about Cam Akers in a second. But yeah, Seahawks, they're in the doghouse. Now, they have Detroit next week, and their best bet is getting interceptions off of Jared Goff. I would say that Jared Goff is a more careless quarterback than Matt Stafford. So I'm going to go ahead and say that, if the Seahawks can get you 10 points, they're going to go onto the probationary portal. What's the criteria for defense? Maybe like a pick or a fumble and then like 10 points, no more than like 24 points given up.
I'd say I think 10's tough with the defense unless you're getting, a touchdown or something like that and you can't rely on that. I'd say like 8.
Yeah, we'll have to monitor their scoring, see what they did on defense, and we'll see if the Seahawks can get out. That's the one that I can't really predict. But we did just talk about this guy, Cam Akers, Paul.
Yeah.
It happened last year where week 1, Cam Akers wasn't even used. But this week, he was used, right?
Yeah, he was
not efficient.
No, he was used in a way that I don't think I can say for the internet. It was rough. If you thought Rachaad White's stat line was bad, Cam Akers had 22 touches for just 29 yards. He averaged under 1.3 yards per carry. Yet you look down and you're like, he's got 8.9 fantasy points. Yeah, he somehow vultured a touchdown, but guess what? We're not buying it here at the eye test. You don't just average 1.3 yards per carry and score a touchdown and expect to not see the pearly gates of the doghouse, baby. So Cam Akers looked very, very rough. He is just one of the weirdest stories of fantasy ever. Like last year was supposed to be the same thing. Supposed to be the featured back in a Sean McVay offense. Comes out, doesn't even see the field, and then they have the whole he's not happy here. But then towards the end of the season, he starts playing well. So then people kind of buy into him now. And it's crazy. 24 years young, from Florida State, which is a pretty good running back factory. I have no idea what to do with this guy, but I don't trust him. I see him staying at the doghouse, maybe for as long as Mr. Tony. I don't know if he's got Mr. Tony's corner suite here in the doghouse, but he's going to be here for a while, I think.
Yeah, they could be bunkmates. This guy, he's got to find his way out, and he's at least has a bunkmate with Joe Burrow. Now, it's not Jamar Chase. We're giving Jamar Chase a pass because of how bad Joe Burrow was, but T. Higgins, he had 0 points, right?
Now, Jamar Chase definitely underperformed, but we're going to give him a pass because he still almost did have 10 points. And believe it or not, he was the most impressive guy on offense with those 10 points. T. Higgins does not get the pass because he was targeted 8 times, which is a lot of targets, and he didn't catch one of them. He put up a goose egg, which I feel like is like a common theme for this week 1. But T. Higgins does not get a pass. He is in the doghouse. However, like I said with Joe Burrow, home opener next week, I think the Bengals are going to come out motivated, and I expect T. Higgins to at least put up his projection, if not exceed his projection next week at home against the Ravens.
Yep. All right. Well, that does it for the Fantasy Doghouse. We got a list of like 20 players in a defense. And we're going to see next week if they find themselves getting comfy in the doghouse or finding themselves on fantasy probation. Next week, we'll be back handing out week 2 awards. We'll see who's winning what, and then we'll do another fantasy doghouse. Who gets out? Who gets put on probation? All that and much, much more on the eye test, brought to you by Belly Up Sports. We will see you next week. Peace.
Peace.